Buenas tardes a todos. Es para nosotros un gran placer tener aquí a nada más ni nada menos que Billy Gould, uno de los personajes más influyentes de la música de las últimas 3 décadas. Para mí es un placer personal como fan de Faith No More tener el privilegio de entrevistarlo aquí en Resonancia 2016. Vamos a hacer la conferencia en inglés. Entonces, quienes, pues la charla en inglés, quienes tengan, necesiten equipo de traducción, reclámenlo de una vez.
Hola, gente.
Okay, Bill, as we were talking a bit ago, I was telling you that my first experience with you personally, but very impersonally, was when I was reading a metal magazine and I saw a picture of some guy with a Sepultura t-shirt, and like it attracted me very much because Sepultura, being Brazilian back in the day, for us as Latin Americans, it's always been like something you, I mean, they mean what you want to reach, that it's possible to actually make it even being from South America. Right. And so I would like to know back in the day how was a little bit that interested that you have shown since forever for South American music and worldwide music in general.
I'm going to probably bring this analogy up a lot. So it's not going to be the first time I'm going to say it, but for me, since I was very young, I connected with music in a way that wasn't really like a business. It was like what I wanted to do with my time and my energy, because I discovered music that excited me, and I kind of equate it to like food, where say I've tasted something that I really connected with me, and it made me interested in, because the food gave me pleasure, learning more about food and eating. Listening to music to me is like eating.
Yeah.
With Faith No More, when we started touring, we were really lucky in that we not only went, this was a certain period of time in the 80s, I guess, and we were coming into places like Brazil to tour where bands weren't quite coming there yet. And for me, just discovering like Sepultura, we met them when they were kids, and it's kind of like learning about food in a place where it tastes different, but you're getting the feeling that gives you the pleasure. And those guys, when we met them, we knew them immediately, and we connected with them, and I'm still friends with all of them. And it's because we were kind of doing the same thing, even though the music is different. And my experience with touring really is that people in a musical sense have their different backgrounds, but are all kind of doing the same thing in the way that they learned. And I've always have something to learn from the different ways of doing the same thing.
Where does that come from? I mean, that curiosity, that interest for like different stuff. I mean, for you as an American, could be just easier to get in the comfort zone and settle with what media gives you and what cultural consumption gives you.
I mean, I never had a good job growing up. I always worked minimum wage jobs. I got fired most of the time. I worked for Domino's Pizza. I did shitty jobs because I made just enough money to where I could play be in a band. And what the pleasure came from the fact that the music is what gave me the pleasure. And so I didn't really care about anything else. And I don't listen to bands because of how familiar they make me feel, how it fits into my social group. It has to do with the pleasure I get from what I hear and what I hear in it. And people have different tastes. But in my taste, if I make that connection, that's all I need. So that's kind of where it came from.
And that in terms of that curiosity and that willing to discover new things, in terms of music, before you became a musician, where does that inspiration come from? I don't know, name 3 influences that for you.
My father was a music was into music. So we had some great records around the house. Like, I say there's 3 records that were like formative for me because he had a record player, and they had 3 albums that I always listened to from when I was like 8 or 9 years old, all the time. And one was John Lennon, Plastic Ono Band. One was David Bowie, Space Oddity. And the third one, I think, was George Harrison, All Things Must Pass. But the first 2 records are very dark, challenging records. Exotic and scary in a way. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar, but like the John Lennon record, he was going through primal scream therapy, and he was releasing a lot of demons and a lot of mental demons. And I was 9 years old, and so I was getting these sophisticated things thrown at me, but that I didn't quite understand, but I felt. And I think probably that's how I probably connected to music, is kind of always had to have a certain mystery and a little bit of fear and challenge, and also a really good feeling.
How, I mean, those 3 records, those 3 artists, all of them began like weird people doing weird stuff that
Definitely.
that wasn't made before, right?
Definitely.
So all of them were game changers in a way.
Absolutely.
And, like misunderstood at the beginning, but then once people understood what they were doing, it just became the game, you know.
I think that's probably true. I mean, it's very subjective, so I can only say what it did for me. I mean, the problem with the United States and the prosperity we've had as a middle-class country is things become very standardized, and going back to food again, because I really think music, I look at less as a spiritual thing and more as a thing like food. It's yes, a spiritual, but more in an earthy way. We have fast food, and we have, quick eating, and we have this culture that, I mean, it doesn't interest me. I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. And, I grew up in Los Angeles, where there's Mexican neighborhoods. It's a very international city where I can find authentic food. And there's a certain connection I make with that is similar. I just see it similar to music.
All right. So I understand when you started Faith No More was because you were tired of shitty jobs, shitty minimum wage.
I was always tired of shitty jobs.
Yes. and you got with Mike Bordin, the drummer, and you
Right.
just started the band and looked for people at the beginning. How was LA? How was San Francisco? How was California back in '83?
San Francisco was a great place in that it was very cheap to live there, and there was a lot of artists living there because it was cheap, and the police let you do whatever you wanted. It was still kind of carried over from the '60s, where if you don't hurt anybody, you can do whatever you want. So I was 18 years old when I moved there. It was fantastic. I grew up there. It was great. At the same time, what was so-called music business there was kind of like structured. Everything came from the Bill Graham School, where the music I was playing with my guys that I really felt good about wasn't getting any attention from anybody. Nobody cared about what we did. So, yeah, I started playing when I was 18, 19 with Mike Bordin, and we played for, that would be 1981 till about 1985. Nobody cared about us. So a good 4 years of absolutely nothing, playing for 2 people. And
what was your income? I mean, how did you live? How did you manage to make a living?
Shitty jobs. We had shitty
4
jobs,
years?
and everything went into the band. And I mean, a million bands live like this. So my situation isn't different than a lot of others. And a lot do it for a lot longer than I did. But I did it, and I know it. And it gave me a perspective on also. Here's a great story. Just kind of how things like the industry works, and the industry with musicians. We were trying anything just to get people to even listen to us or pay attention to what we were doing. And so we joined this thing which is stupid for us, but we said, why not? It was a battle of the bands. And the battle of the bands, there'd be 3 bands competing with each other, and the band that won got a record deal. So it turns out we were one of the bands. The other band was Primus.
Primus.
The third band was some horrible band, I can't remember the name, and they won.
All
And so, that's the day we met Primus. Like, we became really good friends with them because we liked each other. But, I mean, we were, to the people in the industry, we were completely horrible and just completely, like, people were leaving while we were playing, you know. So that's kind of my perspective.
All right, cool. That takes me a little bit to, let's go back to the story of the different eras of Faith No More,
right,
and how it's changed through time, right, up till now.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, the first 4 years, it was you and Mike Bordin and
Roddy Bottum,
and Roddy Bottum,
right,
and Chuck Mosley, right?
Yeah. We had a few different singers, a few different guitar players, but yes, we settled on Chuck Mosley and Jim Martin. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then after the first 2 records, We Care a Lot and Introduce Yourself, Chuck Mosley wasn't there anymore.
Right.
So how is it for a band that has been struggling, you know, to make a decent living out of art for the first 4 or 5 years of their career, to all of a sudden be without a singer, and you guys were without a singer for a couple of years?
Yes.
But still kept recording music.
Well, we had a momentum that we started finally. So we put out the first record, and then we put out the second, and we did some tours. We toured with the Chili Peppers, and so people were getting to know who we were, and the momentum was really great. But we became really dysfunctional with Chuck, where it was getting really hard to get things done. And there was this kind of thing put before us, like, just swallow your situation because the momentum has started. You worked so hard to get here. Don't just do anything it takes to make it happen. And I think I was like 22, 23 years old. I got an ulcer, actually. I actually had an ulcer. And it just came to a certain point where I was like, I don't care. I know what it's like to be where we came from. It's a shame to give up the momentum, but we cannot function like this. And I would rather, I want to try to get a different singer. And it was interesting. Our managers we had at the time, I thought for sure would drop us, and the label I thought for sure would drop us, and they didn't, to their credit. They probably, most rational people would have. And we did about a year where we made the real thing, and we just rehearsed. We didn't have a singer, couldn't find a singer, and just kept writing and kept rehearsing. And when Mike Patton came up, he heard the music, and he just kind of had ideas immediately. And we just came through a really difficult period, and I'm really happy that we made that difficult period.
So how was it? You, with the real thing, you wrote the whole record, and then Mike Patton just wrote the lyrics and sang over
basically
what you guys have
written. Most of the music
written.
was written when Mike came in. Yeah.
Okay, just a quick question, just mandatory quick question. You only have to say one word if you want.
Yeah.
Who is Mike Patton?
Yeah. What day is today?
It's
Mike Patton. I know Mike Patton as a young guy who was younger than us. He was about 19 years old when we were probably about 24, 25. So I saw him kind of as a younger guy who was extremely enthusiastic with music, who was born with a really natural intuition with musical things. Lots of people we've played with before, and we don't really do anything that complicated, but we have this language that we have amongst ourselves that a lot of people just don't get, and he got it immediately, and that's very rare to see. So I would say just, also, he only does things because he really wants to do them. And for better or worse, that really works with us, because when you make controversial choices, it's having that confidence and enthusiasm that gets you through the controversy and makes you not second guess yourself. So that's my perspective with him.
Do you think the entrance of Mike Patton to Faith No More with the real thing was a matter of luck, or was a reward to the hard work and all effort that you guys had been doing for the past 7 years at that time?
It was strange because, okay, he was a younger guy and he was a good-looking guy with a really good voice, and the success that we got in the beginning with him, they gravitated just to him because he was a really easy thing to sell, and people knew what to do with it. Magazines could put him on, and what happened was, I think out of convenience to everybody else, they kind of made us into this kind of band that we really weren't comfortable being, and Mike wasn't comfortable being it either. And they just they did it because it sold easier and it was easy for themselves. And so we kind of had to take a step back with Angel Dust and kind of fight that a little bit to kind of reclaim our identity that we had. That came off actually very negative with most people. Like we were doing a negative thing, like we were shooting our career in the foot. And it really had more to do with the fact that we were just trying to kind of keep our soul together.
Yeah. Okay, so with the real thing, international success came with the real thing, right? That's when you guys went to play to Viña del Mar in Chile, which you see today's lineup of Viña del Mar, and it's
to play with who?
Viña del Mar.
Oh yeah,
in Chile, right?
Right. Yeah.
You went to play there, what, 1990, I think.
1990, yeah.
Yes.
Probably.
If you see today's Viña del Mar lineup, it's shit, basically. But at that time, I mean, how did Faith No More got booked to Viña del Mar, and why?
Great story, actually. Okay. So this is kind of interesting. We were really lucky. Like, I think we are the luckiest band in the whole world. And one reason was because when we were touring a lot was like 1989, 1990, and the world was changing then. The Berlin Wall fell. We were in Berlin the night the wall fell playing. So we saw a lot of this, and we got exposed to a lot of Eastern European countries very quickly. We played in Rock in Rio in Brazil, I think in 1990, and Viña del Mar, Pinochet had just left Chile, and the society was still a little bit conservative, and they decided they wanted to get a little more international perspective and bring more international artists in. And it turns out that we were the cheapest band that played in Rock in Rio. So we heard from our manager, yeah, you're going to Chile. And we're like, okay, cool. I've never been to Chile before. Let's go. And we were pretty obnoxious back then. We were just kind of we had a lot of fun in Brazil. Brazilians, I think, appreciated our sense of humor because we were kind of clowns. And we had a good dialogue in that way. We kind of clowned around together. So we decided we were going to do the same thing with Chile. And we were just like, we're pretty obnoxious and we were pretty irreverent. And as it turns out, the Viña Festival was a pretty conservative festival. And there were a lot of guys there with military clothes on with their families. And we were really, it was not a good fit at all. In fact, it was a disaster. And we played, I remember we played, and at the end of our set, there was maybe like 6 people in the audience. Everybody, all the families had left. We were the worst band they had ever seen. And what saved us was it was broadcast on television, and all these kids in their houses all over the country saw this totally insane band doing something that they would never see on TV before, and they made this connection with us big time. And it was just really a circumstance.
So after that point, I mean, was it there when your interest for what was going on down in South America started?
It is, and Brazil too, because, well, like in Chile, we played that one festival, but we managed to stay there for a week. So we played one show, and we had 6 days of just running around. So, you know, what do you do when you get down there? You know, I want to learn about the food. I want to, you know, get into trouble, you know, and do things that kids want to do. Yeah. And also, I mean, Chile was really fascinating for me because it has a similar climate to California where I grew up, and I felt like it was like a second home to me. I had this very strange feeling, and I ended up going back again just on my own because I felt that connection there.
Okay, great. Well, right after you did Chile, and you did it again, and you did it again, you did it, I understand, like 4 times during the first half of the 90s. But that also is at the same time you actually reached the highest point of success of Faith No More at that point with Angel Dust, with King for a Day, and with Album of the Year, right? How was it in terms of business, in terms of industry, like finding that spot between credibility and artistry versus what industry and media wanted you to be?
One thing that I'm always a little bit suspicious about in music conferences is the way the music business is looked at as an empirical type of thing with like you give this much and this much comes back, and it's like a formula that works. And in my experience is everything kind of happens at the same time. There isn't so much of a plan to understand. You know, it appears that we became very successful after Angel Dust, but in fact, a lot of different things happen. In the United States, our popularity went way down. And if you look at it from a U.S. perspective, you know, we were a one-hit wonder because the United States is the center of the world. And according to the industry in the United States, we basically did 2 failing records after that. If you go to UK, it's going to be a different story. And because we toured a lot, we had different experiences on the same record in a lot of different places. And it made me very interested in how perception actually is, and what validation is, and what is your band worth, and what is your band successful, because there is no one standard. It really is sometimes dependent on where you are and who connects with you, and it changes all the time.
Okay, so it was between, if I'm not mistaken, King for a Day and Album of the Year that you started the project Brujeria.
Right.
Right? It was around 95,
Actually, it might have been
96?
Angel Dust time, yeah.
Angel Dust time, so
Yeah.
back 92, 93,
Yeah.
something like that, right? What's the meaning you were looking for of Brujeria? And also, who were involved and what was the goal of it?
I'm one guy of a group of guys. Okay, so I'm Güero Sin Fe, so I'm a little bit of the outsider. But I went to high school in Los Angeles, where it was a very mixed school, and the guys in the band and I grew up together, and we were all kind of had similar musical tastes. We went to punk shows, and there was a certain period of time, probably in 1989, 90, when East LA was getting really into grindcore. Bands like Terrorizer, Napalm Death, and it was really getting picked up in like Latino community. But well, Juan Brujo's, my friend, was like, you know, this is like, they have the energy and the aggression, but they're not making the cultural connection like it really is in it where it's from, and we should do that. And it was like we did it, and it was fun. It was kind of scary because when he was first doing the lyrics, the people in the studio were like, my mother can't find out about this. And it was really interesting. It was really kind of a cultural experiment, I would say. My brother was living in Cuernavaca in Mexico, and I went to go visit him, and John Brujo was like, here, take some of these singles down with you. Maybe some record store will pick them up. It was for the first single, and I remember like I met my brother, and it was a day when the elections are going on, and he was with some friends, and in Mexico, the whole family gets together for the elections. The grandmother, everybody comes, and Rogelio, my brother's family, go, oh, this is your brother who's the musician. And he's like, yeah. He goes, did he bring any music with him? And my brother goes, yeah, this single right here. And it was like Papa Capado. And I was like, the grandmother wanted to hear it. And I was sitting there like starting to sweat, you know, and they have this little record player, and all the little kids are looking around, and they put the music on. It was like, they were cool. And I was like, whew. But that was really like a time when making that music that there was we didn't really say who we were. It was more like a force. And it was kind of in a way of like really hitting taboos head on and just like breaking them open.
Okay, but it was a grindcore band that didn't exist in Latin America at that time, but it was focused, I mean, the concept of it was exactly all the controversial stuff. You spoke about drugs, you spoke about Satan, about killing politicians, about, all the...
And we were into the music too. I mean, we were into grindcore too. So
yeah.
We were just trying to make it contextually correct.
At what point started the involvement of Shane Embury from Napalm Death, of Dino Casares from Fear Factory, and then there was rumors that there was people from Slayer and people from different bands, and how did that affect like the future of the band?
Well, for me, I had a band, Faith No More, which is very dramatic. We're all really different personalities, and everything is difficult to do everything in my band. for better or worse. That's a good thing about us, and it's a bad thing. And Brujeria in the beginning was like, we're not going to be one of those bands. We're going to be anonymous, and this is just one of those things that we won't fall into these band traps. And the band started getting a little more popular, and I just saw it becoming like a band that I was already in. We started to have band arguments and fighting, and it's like, it's just one is enough for me. So I'm friends with those guys. Everything is really cool. I just kind of put my focus back in Faith No More. I didn't really need to. I was touring a lot with Faith No More, and it just didn't make any sense.
But then Faith No More split up after Album of the Year. I think you guys split up in 97, 98?
Yeah, about 98 probably.
And I mean, I'm not going to ask why did you split up, because just relationships start and end.
It was a good time for everybody, I think.
Yeah, but you split up at the top of your career as a band, and then you got, what, without a job again? And what did you feel at that moment? Okay, so this is not there anymore. What am I gonna do?
Absolutely.
And what did you do right after?
Well, I mean, I wanted to work with music, but I didn't have a band, so I was very lucky that in my band I got to tour a lot, and I got to meet a lot of people and hear a lot of good music. And like the music I was listening to, I couldn't buy in the United States. It just wasn't there. Band from Finland called CMX that I really liked, and it was like, you can't get that. And it's like, this is great music. So I thought, well, why don't I just try a record label where I can try to bring these bands that I'm finding all over the world that like can't get into the United States and be a pipeline for this. So that's originally what I started doing, but it was much more difficult than I expected. And I really, being American, sometimes you don't realize how easy it is to export your art, but how hard it would be if I was coming from somewhere else. And bringing things into the States, I saw this giant wall there. And it was very eye-opening, and it really changed my perspective on how things worked.
Okay, so that's the time when you decided to start a record label on your own, to start from scratch, to be an entrepreneur again, what, 20 years after or 15 years after you started the band?
Right,
in the first place. How was, I mean, that challenge? I mean, first of all, with Cool Arrow Records, what's the concept of the record label, the curation, and the artists you have signed there, and what's the intention of signing artists?
I mean, my thing is, when I find a lot of bands, like I think with the internet, we have different countries we live in with different tax systems and different immigration policies. But culturally speaking, I don't think countries really matter so much anymore with the internet. I think that we're all the same, really, on a cultural level. And I don't think that things are the same. I think that the stronger forces get more power, and I think it's to everybody's loss. I think that our quality of life suffers when everything culturally we get comes from a system that works economically, but isn't connected to the origin of the art. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically, if I see a band in Bosnia, and I know what they're doing, and I know how hard it is for them because I've been there as a musician, where they have this wall that they're fighting, but I see that they also have the will to fight. That gives me the energy to want to fight with them, because I feel like I'm fighting for quality of life. I feel like them being ignored has nothing to do with their art. It has more to do with the system in place. And I would like to break through that system.
Okay, so that's, I mean, how you contribute with your label, signing bands from Chile, from Philippines, from Denmark, from Bosnia,
it sounds, because I have a label, that sounds very like some kind of foundation or something, but it's really, I am the label. It's very small. It's just me doing it. And I can't sign a lot of bands because I only have so many resources, and I like to sleep sometimes too. But that is where I get my energy. I would love to see other people doing the same thing. I think that really a lot of people complain that they don't like music today. They don't like a lot of music they hear, but You know, a lot of it has to do with how, you know, fighting for music that you want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so during those 18 years you were apart from Faith No More, you had several different projects apart from the label. You played with different bands. You played with Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys. You had another project, ambient instrumental, which I don't remember the name right now.
Talking Book, yeah.
The Talking Book, yes, exactly. But then 18 years after, you guys came back together with Faith No More, and you released the record, which for me it's timeless as everything else you have done with the band before. How is it to like restart a career when all your audience in the 90s have grown old and have lost interest in music, most of them? How is it that you guys have done to actually gather new fans and getting again in the mind of a wider audience, releasing a record after 18 years of being apart?
At the end of the day, I have to look at it like a musician. If I feel like I have something good, conditions always change. You can't control where the world is listening to and what they want to do. Going back again, like saying about food, I mean, if a certain steak tasted good in 1985, it should still taste good today. If it's done a certain way, maybe you cook with a little less butter now, you know, maybe there's some new kind of cooking technique you can do, but a steak is a steak. And the music that we had for Sol Invictus, it felt good. And when something is satisfying like that, we're being the restaurant, we're offering the food. People can like it or they don't like it, but I think that we like the product that we made, and it's going to have a life of its own after that, and you just kind of have to live with it. Also, I'm really happy that it took off and got accepted, but really the success was finishing it and being happy with it.
Also, that album was recorded at your Kularo Studios.
Yes, right.
So, in a way, what you did in the past 18 years was also, related to the reunion of Faith No More, and you actually could make everything work out together. And most recently, you just reissued Wicker a lot, yes, under the Kularo label as well.
I think one of the reasons this worked, it's one of those things you can't touch, but we reconnected as a band because we didn't have anybody else involved. There was no managers, there was no recording engineers. It was just us. And we connected like 5 people without an industry around us. And I think that really made a big difference in our perspective towards making this record. It was very important for us to do. And it brought us back to when we were first starting.
If you hadn't came back together as a band, probably you would have never come to Bogota. You came for the first time in 2015 to play a show with Faith No More in the Sol Invictus tour, which was a great show, I have to say. And also, you told me, like right after you came back again for a longer time just for fun.
Yeah.
And now, in less than 1 year, you're here again. So, what's calling you from Colombia right now as a musician, as a producer, and as a label, and as an artist looking for new stuff?
My experience, which in the superficial time I've been here, is I've met some really interesting people, and I see that there's something deep here that I would like to learn about. It's got my curiosity. I think that there's some depth to the culture here, and yeah, it interests me.
Okay, well, you coming here 3 times in less than a year takes me back again to all the, your interest in what's going on everywhere with food everywhere in the world, right? So would you, like a producer or as a label or as an artist, if you find something here that calls your attention, for example, here we have several artists, several bands, starting bands, more established, that you would be interested interested in promoting and to get to know a little bit more of the root of what's going on here?
I think, obviously, if something inspired me, I definitely would. But I would like to also say, for bands here, when you think about that the world is coming in, paying attention now, try to have some perspective that it's really your band is your business, and don't expect a label to change your life, really. Labels only change your life after you already changed your life. Usually people, if I can find a way to help, I can help, but I can't fix things, you know. So much of what a band's success has to do is from the band. And I think that people like to see a band that's doing something. What gets me into the bands I work with is I see that they're already doing it and I want to be part of it. Because I see that they've already found the energy in themselves to make something happen. And yeah, I would be totally interested in working with a band here. But I have to say, to be completely honest, there's not much difference if I signed a band from here is going to make without full-on band vision and participation. It's really important.
Okay, great. Well, a little bit more of as an advice somehow, and also due to your character, I mean, to who you are as an artist.
Yeah.
I just want to recall the joke about the guitar player, right?
Okay.
Because I've seen it in several interviews you've been in, and you always, I don't know, either you're with Mike Bordin or with Roddy Bottum or with Mike Patton, you always say, yeah, no, the guitar player. Explain to us that joke about the guitar player and what's the meaning of that joke in a deeper, artist way.
I don't know. I'm not sure I understand the joke because I don't know the joke you're referring to.
I've seen you in several interviews talking about the guitar player who is the one looking for the spotlight, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because there's several bands that form people that form a band in order to get the spotlight.
Okay. I think I know what you're talking about. I think this probably has to do with more musical speaking. There's many different ways to climb a hill. There's many different ways to bake a cake. You know, there's no right way. There's no wrong way. For me, if I want to go up the hill, I like to take the interesting way. So I think that, sometimes cliches are fun in that you can use them and you can be humorous with them. But I think that using a cliche to get you up the hill can be done, but it's not as interesting. So guitar, it really has to do with social conditioning and how we're brought up and how we're taught. I'm a bass player, and I was always taught that I had to sit in the back and fill in all the holes that everybody else was making and just shut up and stay in the back. And that was never very satisfying for me, and I just kind of found a way to fit myself into the architecture. And I think the guitar players sometimes are brought up in ways of being told it's all about you, and learn how to solo as good as you can, and you deserve 30 seconds of soloing in every song, and I just don't subscribe to that in my band. I don't think that it has to be that way. I don't think there have to be those kind of rules. But that's it. I'm not against guitar players. I love guitar players.
Okay, I would like to also to ask you about the visual Faith No More, the visual side of Faith No More, since the different eras and the concept of the music videos from, I don't know, We Care a Lot or The Jungle back in the day, right? And then the era of The Real Thing with videos like Falling to Pieces and Epic, and then different era, for example, the video for Ashes to Ashes. How has that visual evolution been, gone the same way your music you wanted to take your music?
I think that just we grew up and we let ourselves grow up naturally. I think how our visual changed was just where we were at the time. And one thing about a group is, like us, when we have a record out, it isn't just that we release a record, we have to tour that record for about a year. And so after a year, you get pretty sick of those songs. And you want to do something else. I mean, after a year of playing on a set, so every record we did was always a little bit of a reaction of the one before because we were so sick of some aspects of the record we did before. We wanted to try to go somewhere to keep it fresh. And I think that that's just what the band has done. And you can look back at now and you can see the thread of all of our stages, but I think it's really just us at that period of time trying to be honest in the stage that we were in, and that's who we were.
Okay, great. What's next for Faith No More? What are the plans for the future?
That is a good question. Faith No More, what's next? One thing I can say is that our relationship is very good. We have a really positive relationship, and we don't do anything unless we're all on board to do it. Whatever that means. Right now, doesn't mean anything, except that we see each other and talk to each other once in a while. But it also means, I think, that when we are ready to do something again, I think that we'll be in the right frame of mind to do it. So I think it's all positive.
Okay, great. Well, Bill, we're running out of time, so I would just open questions to the crowd. So if anyone, si alguien quiere preguntar algo.
Hi, Billy.
Hi.
Big fan of Faith No More. Well, first of all, I would like to know what are you looking for in the bands you are singing with your record label, and second of all, if it's possible to hear our music.
It's definitely possible to hear your music. As far as the kind of bands, music I listen to, I'm a very bad record label when it comes to this because I don't have a specific genre of music that I work with. I work with everything if I have a connection with it. And it's really stupid for marketing because I can't tell anybody what kind of label I am. But I can say that everything I do, I handpick and that I really believe in it. So I'm always interested in hearing things. I'm limited with how much I can physically put out. And that's my biggest frustration. But I'm always interested in hearing things.
Hola Billy, buenas tardes. ¿Cuál ha sido tu experiencia trabajando con dos proyectos tan diferentes como lo es Dubiosa Collective y este grupo chileno Cómo Asesinar a Felipes? Y thank you so much for the influence in the music.
Both groups who I love, Cómo Asesinar a Felipes from Chile and Dubiosa Collective from Bosnia, who have played here. Actually, both bands have played here already. Amazing bands, both completely independent, where we work like partners together. They work so hard and they don't stop, and I feel like I'm a member of their band. They're also doing music that's very groundbreaking in a completely different way. Como Asesinar a Felipe there's nothing, you can't compare it to any other band making music, really. And yet it's very natural and it's very themselves. And I hit a wall sometimes with expectations because it doesn't fit into a hip-hop category or a jazz category or a Latin category. But to me, that shows me that that's because they're a better band than that. They're their own thing. And in Dubiosa Collective, the music is completely different. In some ways more conventional, but what they're doing with music is completely groundbreaking. They're really changing things, especially where they live in Bosnia, in the Balkan areas, and places like Germany. They're an unstoppable force, and I love them. What's that? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah.
Besides the band, you also became a very important producer, but it came along with the years and the experience. My question is, an independent artist, what is more useful for an independent artist? To try to be their own producers or to try to be their own managers?
Oh, good question. Every situation is unique with every band and the personalities in the band. In Faith No More, think sometimes too much like a manager, but the good thing for the band was we didn't need a manager right away because I was kind of being the manager. Sometimes a producer, for us, a producer was very important because this is a really strange thing, but when our music sounded better sonically recorded, people were more open to listening to our music. And it could be the same songs, but when the production was better, people listened better. It's how human nature works. So we always had Matt Wallace producing our music from the beginning because he had a technical knowledge that we didn't have, and it made a difference for us. But everybody's different, and everybody has different things. And I think that, you know, you have to kind of look at yourselves like a band, and you have to say, because you're a team, what are our strong points that we can do, and what are some things where we really need help? But there's no rules. There are no rules. We got one here.
Hello, Billy. My name is Santiago. Thank you very much for your experience, for sharing us a little bit of what you have lived in this music industry. I'm really happy to hear from you that musicians and artists will not change their lives just by getting in touch with a record label. Because what you're saying is that it's really important for an artist to work their careers by themselves as an entrepreneur, for say it in some way. Even though record labels are really important in the industry, so when will you suggest or when will you recommend a band, a new artist, to approach to a record label?
Sorry, the last part of the question? Could you repeat the last part? I couldn't hear you so well.
Okay, perfect. My question is, record labels are really important in the industry, but most of the job should be made at the first stage by the artist by himself.
Right.
But when would you recommend an artist to approach to a record label?
There's no rules. I say approach them from the very beginning, and if nobody bites, I say use any asset you can, really. If it's the right record label, you find them or you don't find them. Just to put a quick analogy, you know, a lot of people are talking about how downloading is killing music and you know, the music industry is in collapse, and this is all true. And as a label, actually, it is a problem because there are expenses. The expenses stay the same, and the sales go down. That is a problem. But at the same time, if the music business crashed completely, I'm not going to stop making music and working with music because this is what I want to do with my life. So whether the music business is high or low, I'm going to do it anyway. You know? It makes no difference. And I think that that's really important for bands to have this perspective. Whatever happens with their band, make the music you want to make. It will, and you will find your way through.
Well, just to, you know, take a little bit from that response, what's your appreciation, pros and cons about the music, I mean, about the business today, about the industry today?
I mean, everybody needs business. You need delivery. If I write a song, I need it to go somewhere so people can hear it. There needs to be an apparatus, no doubt about it. And I'm grateful for that. The reason I have connections with people is from this apparatus. I'm just always very suspicious with so-called industry and industry people because a lot of times people are trying to sell things to you to make things better for you and to make you market your things better. What they're actually doing is finding ways to make money for themselves. And I'm always suspicious of that. I think the best way to make connections with people is playing live music and getting into personal contact.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I think this is all for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming down to Bogotá.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to meet you all.
Y ahora vamos a un break de 15 minutos y seguimos a las 4 con...